Here I am joined by David Kenny, CEO and Chief Diversity Officer of Nielsen. So I just want to jump right in to tell us a little bit about how AI has been changing your business, particularly with ratings and consumer behavior.
Yeah, so we have two core businesses. One measures everything people consume on media. That is a true set that's used for trading. So everybody who buys advertising quotes it in Nielsen currency or Nielsen ratings. We're getting much stronger at being able to do that across all screens. So whether people are watching on their phone, on an iPad, whether they're streaming, whether they're listening through an Amazon Echo, we need to measure all of that. AI really helped us be able to find all those images and recognize them so that we've got a far more robust view of what people are doing. The other business measures everything people buy in the supermarket and drugstore, so all the FMCG products. And again, those technologies enable us to be far more precise about exactly what product people are buying in a cheaper and faster way.
So one thing that you know from your business is that people say they're going to do something and then they actually do another thing. For years, your business was all about, or a lot about surveys. Has that really changed in this age of facial recognition? We can really watch exactly what people are doing and what they're feeling as they're buying stuff or watching something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're far more behavior-based today. So we're actually measuring what people are actually doing. And how they're discovering things. So we still round things out with surveys, but there's so many data sets we have today about behavior that I think we can be far more fact-based, behavioral-based, versus trying to infer from a survey.
And so before your life at Nielsen, you also worked at IBM Watson and the Weather Channel. You were telling me a little bit about what changed by using AI at the Weather Channel from when you joined and when you left. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can, and it's a good example for all the things I did in Watson. And you already had Harriet Green up here, one of my colleagues. So, but I would say what we learned was a different way of humans and machines working together. So when we decided to put the weather forecast on every mobile phone, when it became installed in iOS on all Apple phones, became standard in Android phones, we had to do forecasts for 2 billion people every 15 minutes. That had to be done by machine. And the machines got better and better. So there used to be about a 12% error rate if you went out 3 days between what we predicted and what actually happened. We got that down to 4 because the machines got smarter. But the other thing that took about half the error out is we stopped letting meteorologists override the machine. We studied for a year. This is just 75% of the time that the meteorologists said, that's not right, this is what it is. They made it worse.
So let me just make sure that we all understand. So 12% of the time, what you were looking at on your weather app was wrong. Like it was just going to rain when it
3 days out, yeah.
3 days out. And then by the time you left, the error rate had gone down to 4. And that's because you asked the meteorologist to stop meddling in the machine.
Yes, and the machine got smarter, but half of the advance was taking humans out of overriding the machine.
So how do you retrain a workforce like that? How do you tell those humans, actually, when you don't do what you were hired to do, we do better?
So you better learn something new. Listen, in your business, this Nielsen Media is used for programming. So programmers always think it's artistic. I know better what people are going to watch. It's all an art. Not true. The machines are actually better predicting what people are going to watch. They're better predicting how the ads are going to show. So I think what we have to train the humans on is trust the machine. Don't override that. Even if you don't like the answer, go with it. And then say, well, what can you do creatively? What can you introduce that's new? So we're actually encouraging people to be far more creative. I honestly think jobs are going to be a lot more interesting when we let machines do the rote work and we're spending all of our time on new innovation.
Because for the weather example, if you were meddling or if you were overriding, then the machines actually couldn't learn and get better. Is that right?
That's absolutely true because you have introduced a false algorithm or a false piece of data into the algorithm. It's much better to have the algorithm work and then improve on its own. So, and we're finding this all the time in the way we do ratings and CPG advertising today, is that letting the machines operate is just getting to better answers.
And so the folks who study weather can then start to do things like we were talking about, studying oceans, climate, things like that, that can then, in the end, feed into the AI.
Yeah, so I think we got a lot more creative in weather about, well, how could that change airline scheduling. The majority, 90% of all schedules in airlines and delays are caused by weather. Better predicting it, then how can that fit into the aviation systems? How could it fit into agriculture? How could it fit into clean energy? So there's a lot of more use cases. So it allowed people to be creative on using the data versus just correcting it. And the same thing is true today in media planning and advertising.
So at Nielsen now, how are you trying to change behavior among humans to say, people on their LinkedIn profiles will say like, oh, I know how to analyze Nielsen data, but that's like a rote task in a way. Like, how do you train people to work in probabilities and not necessarily like, if I do A, B will happen?
Well, listen, even in the old days, it was truly a probability. There's no perfect prediction of the future. So I think we're teaching people to be more rigorous. If you know this is only 80% likely, what are you going to do? And what are your contingencies for the other 20%? So it's helping people to make better decisions in the way they plan those things. I think the second thing we're working at Nielsen and with our clients is to work at much higher velocity. There's actually things that we're learning real time, like during the airing of a program, or we do a lot in sports, during a live sports event, that can actually, you can make changes on the fly, real time, about getting the right ad at the right time, getting the right thing addressed to the right person. So having folks be able to set things up to work real time with high velocity is the way we're winning.
And so when you joined Nielsen, you also gave yourself the title of Chief Diversity Officer. It had not been done before at the company or very many companies. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, listen, and I think earlier today there's been a lot of discussions around AI ethics and around true data, both of which are essential for us. We are the truth set of media, and we're the true set of CPG. In order to make sure we're true, we have to make sure everyone's counted. It's essential that we count every LGBTQ person because that enables advertising dollars to be developed for that audience and shows to include those characters. I think gender parity is essential to AI. Making sure that men and women's voices are equally understood in the models are key. And so for me, I think what I wanted to make sure is that people didn't view diversity as a CSR effort or a good thing to do in our population or something to comply. Fundamentally, the only way Nielsen becomes the trusted data set in media and consumer goods is that we count everybody. And I needed from the very top to commit to that to our shareholders, to our board of directors, to our clients. So, for me, there was no other place to put diversity, but at the very top, you can't have a true data set unless it counts everyone.
And that's because specific ad dollars actually then will go follow those outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a $70 billion TV advertising market in the US alone. All of that trades on Nielsen currency. So if your data is being used to determine what shows are getting produced, where the ad dollars are going, what products are being developed, where stores are being built, you need to make sure you're counting everyone. And in this part of the world, I think it's critical that we're counting genders. It's critical that we're not having any racial bias. It's critical that we're counting rural areas as well as urban areas. The risk is that you don't want AI to be an elite platform. You want it to be a human platform. And I think we've got a great chance to bring all humans into the decision using this technology.
And so one specific thing you committed to, right, was having complete gender parity at Nielsen, 50%? Is that?
At all levels.
At all levels.
So I think what really matters is that, when I even get to the executives that were 50-50. So we've got a little ways to go. We're more like 43-57 right now. So I'm really making sure that all the opportunities are there, policies are there, my personal mentoring is there. Men have to own gender parity as much as women for it to work.
And so from a gender perspective, it sounds theoretically like it makes sense. But from your experience, we were talking a little bit about your experience at IBM Watson. You've seen what happens when you don't have all the people accounted for. Can you give us a little example?
Well, listen, I think whenever you're training a model, I was sharing with you the model of trying to measure melanoma, because you can now use image recognition for that. But if your images are mostly Caucasian, then and your use cases are mostly different skin color, you've got a real problem. So that had to change in terms of images. I think the things that we're doing today in measuring advertising and in measuring programming on the media side, if that was just trained by what we've seen in the past, then you'll probably end up with some gender bias. You'll certainly end up with some racial bias. You certainly won't be inclusive of all sexual orientations. So I think we have to really insist that the data be inclusive to make sure that the AI models are serving everybody. And quite honestly, it drives revenue growth. There's good business in serving everybody versus deducing down to the population you've historically understood.
So we've touched a little bit about the global nature of your business, but correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are in more than 100 countries.
We are.
What is going to happen to your business, or what is currently happening to your business now that you're seeing all these global tensions, particularly the trade war between US and China?
Yeah, so we largely support media and consumer goods, so there isn't as much manufacturing between the two. But listen, trade war creates uncertainty. I don't think anyone wins a trade war in the end. The uncertainty does cause investment levels to come down. I think some of the movements towards nationalism generally in the world, I think are making consumers not really look fully at global products, and I think all the investments aren't happening. So we're hopeful to get more certainty. We're hopeful also to return to more global cooperation. These AI models improve with more data. Being able to share data across borders, to share insights across borders, makes all the algorithms live. I'm totally convinced that the more global you are, the more successful you're going to be as a business. And quite honestly, in AI, those who share globally are going to beat any individual country's initiatives.
So have you run up against any problems from that perspective?
Yeah, well, listen, in the media, a lot of governments understand that the media also affects culture. So I think we've had to really work to earn the trust with governments, and we spent a lot of time on government engagement to show them that these metrics actually help them. I think it's been important that we align with policymakers. You've got these global platforms that are beginning to be the primary way people consume media, making sure our measurements of those platforms are consistent globally but understood locally. I think helping people understand how media is influencing public sentiment, how it's influencing consumer behavior, helps policymakers. So I would say the need for Nielsen to engage at the policy level with government has only grown higher in the last 6 months as a result of some of these changes on the global stage.
Have you seen a problem with attracting talent? Are you having a harder time now attracting talented people to come to the U.S. that might have more readily came?
Well, I don't need them to come to the U.S. We've got talent around the world. So part of what we're focused on is to make sure we're doing more development on a global basis, and we're using talents so people can stay in their own countries. I've got a big focus here on the 11,000 people who are in this part of the world in Asia. I think there's just amazing talent. The education systems are producing enormous skill here. So part of what we need to do is a better job of designing our software so it can be developed in different parts of the world and become more interoperable. So that helps attract talent. I think the focus on diversity has actually helped. Everybody feels they can achieve here. One of the other advantages of AI is we've been able to use AI to help people who might have a physical disability. So blind people can contribute if you've got voice recognition. Deaf people contribute in other ways. So it's also allowing more talents to come in, and that's helping us as well. That said, we're in a very competitive world. We know people have choices. Folks are rotating between jobs. So I think attracting people has been fine. I'm really working on retaining them as well. And that's largely about giving people interesting work to do.
You've been a leader at many companies, many global companies. How do you see this trade war ending, and what are businesses really supposed to do who are kind of caught in between?
Well, I don't think businesses can be passive. I think we have to stand up and clarify, where, the trade war, results in things like tariffs, where those taxes help and hurt, what they actually do for the economy. Is taxation really going to give consumer a better product at a lower price? I don't think we can be shy about this. I think we've got to engage and make that happen. Secondly, we have to listen to, what's the underlying sentiment of the citizens who elected those leaders that are causing those leaders to believe that they have to fight for this trade war, and what do we do about that? I think this responsibility to everyone, my focus on inclusion, making sure that we're inclusive in media and packaged goods is essential to also making everybody feel they're getting part of the economic benefit. Because when they don't, that's when they argue for nationalism. That's when they argue for keeping things closer to the inside. So I think we're all seeing a warning signal as global leaders to engage, to serve everyone, and also a need to really engage with government so that the full implications of these policies are understood. So I think we can help solve it.
But you said you were hopeful. What underpins that hope?
Ultimately, economics win. I think as more people see benefit from the economy, as more people see that their lives are getting easier, as more people see that their standard of living is improving from globalization, they'll embrace it. So I'm hopeful that, I don't think I'm alone on this. A lot of my CEO colleagues and a lot of our clients in particular are very focused on creating real value around the world. And as that happens, I believe that people will vote that way, and certainly in all the democratic nations, we'll see that. And I think that will help with other nations as well. So in the end of the day, I believe in people, I believe in humans, I believe as tech helps humans and their standard goes up, things work out.
So bring the conversation back to AI a little bit.
Yep.
I know this is the Sooner Than You Think conference, but one of the things that you kind of cautioned was not over-promising.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in the past and what you're now looking not to over-promise at Nielsen?
Yeah. Listen, there was a lot of marketing around AI and its promise. And I do believe AI will help with medicine. I do believe AI will help create highly customized products. I do believe AI will change the efficiency, and maybe we'll even have robots who do household chores for us one day. So these things are all possible, but they are going to take time. And I think when people saw the promise of where we're going to be 10 years from now, not here yet, they concluded, well, that was a farce. And that actually sets you back. So I think understanding that underneath AI is the field of machine learning. Machine learning, like human learning, starts with small things. Learning language, learning the alphabet, learning how to read. And so we're at kindergarten level now. So let's expect kindergarten level contributions. And then we'll get to the next level and the next level. So I think having people understand the learning process is key. I also think I prefer, and part of why I loved coming to Nielsen is, I don't talk about AI as much as I talk about the outcomes. I talk about more precise advertising, greater confidence in the truth, better product development, better store development, better e-commerce development. When people see the outcomes, they're excited, and those outcomes get better literally every 90 days because the algorithms get better. If I promise it as AI, you're expecting some miracle cure, and quite honestly, you don't know how to use it. So what I loved about the conference, why I agreed to come, is that you're getting really practical about real applications today.
And tracking now is kind of a dirty word sometimes. I mean, what do you tell the homes of the people that you're going into about things like privacy, what you're going to do with that information? How do you build that trust?
Yeah, so Nielsen collects data from a lot of places. And so raw data we collect, we're very careful to not have personal information. We do improve that data with panels. And panels are important because they can represent the census. And the panelists, they allow us to be quite intrusive. I mean, we come in, we have software on their screens, we know what they're streaming through their routers.
Sensors on their heads?
Well, that's a particular research technique. Every panelist doesn't have to do that. But we're really clear with them how we're using the data. That data is locked under layers and layers of cyber. It will never be shared with anyone. No one will ever market to them as a result of it. And they agree to do it because they know their voice represents a big population that looks like them. And so people want to make a difference, and they're glad to share. But we earn their trust. It's a very strong recruiting process, and we are just inviolate about anything that would go anywhere near a privacy invasion there, because the whole thing would crumble otherwise. And I think increasingly, a lot of smart marketers are realizing the value of panels to get insight without having to go anywhere near privacy. I think the privacy requirements around the world, most back to government engagement, privacy is going to become more and more important, not less, as we move along. So having other ways to get insight, having your voice recognized without your privacy violated, is essential. And I think this is why you'll continue to see panel be core to the Nielsen promise.
Great.